Good morning. So before entering into today's topic, we could just go through a small clinical scenario. So this is the pre-operative view of a patient who reported to our department after root canal treatment in relation to 2-4. So this patient reported to the department for post-endodontic restoration in relation to 2-4. Now different treatment options were given to the patient and different choices of materials were also given to the patient. And based on that, tooth preparation was performed. So this is the picture of tooth preparation. So I don't think that this is a picture of complete tooth preparation. Maybe in between an image was taken. So anyways, so the different choices of material which were given to the patient were ceramic restoration and porcelain-infused crowns and also full metal crowns. These are the three choices or choices which is usually given to the patient, and based on this choice, the tooth preparation will be performed. Now, our concern is about the making of these processes. So there are different methods for making such types of processes. So usually we cast these uh, processes, or else we can go for CAD/CAM procedures for the fabrication of such sorts of processes. Now, CAD/CAM is a different procedure which is performed for the making of such kinds of processes, and casting is one kind of procedure. So we are going to talk about casting procedures. So how is this process is made by the process of casting? So today's topic is casting procedures. Now, the objective of casting is to prepare an exact permanent metallic duplicate of the missing tooth structure as accurately fitting as possible. Now, as I have already explained, when the patient appears, the dentist will study the clinical situation and will plan the design of the client. So accordingly, the tooth preparation or the cavity cutting of the tooth or teeth to receive the appliances is done by the dentist. Now, after that, the impression is made. So this is the situation. So tooth preparation is done and then the impression is made. And using this impression, we put cast, and from this cast, if needed, a dye is retrieved, or else on this cast itself, the wax pattern is fabricated, and after the fabrication of the wax pattern is sometimes retrieved from the die or cast, or sometimes it is as such invested. So the next step is investing of the wax pattern, and after investment, we go for wax burnout. Okay, so this is the steps. So fabrication of wax pattern on the die or on the cast. So we can just talk about a single, we are just talking about a single piece now. So we can say that from the cast, the single prepared tooth is separated, so that is known as dye, and that dye is separated from the cast. From that, the wax pattern is fabricated, and onto that wax pattern, the screw is attached, and this screw is attached to a screw base. Now, after attaching to the screw base, the casting ring is placed, and then the investment material is poured. Now, after the setup of the investment material, we go for wax burnout. So by the procedure of wax burnout, the wax pattern which is fabricated and is attached to everything will create a mold space. Okay, this mold space, into this mold space, the molten alloy is melted. Okay, the alloy is melted, and in the molten form of the alloy, it is forced into the mold space. Now, inside the mold space, the metal is allowed to cool down and set, and after the setting of the molten alloy, we go for breaking of the investment. This procedure is known as divestment. Okay. After divestment, what we will get from on that also the screw and the screw base also will be there. So the screw is removed, and then the trimming and polishing of the ground is done, and then the crown is given to the patient. So it is delivered to the patient. So these are the steps which is explained now, and this is the diagram of all this. Now, I've told that the procedure is known as lost wax casting procedure. So this is known as lost wax casting procedure because the wax pattern is fabricated and then this wax is uh, burned out to get the mold straight. Now, the entire procedure which I have been talking about, it should be done very carefully and it should be well planned and preparation should be meticulously followed to achieve the goal of perfect fit of the prosthesis. Now, the tooth preparation and the impression making is usually performed by the dentist. The rest of the part which I have been explained, there is a casting procedure that is from the start of pouring a cast till the procedure of finishing and polishing of the crown is usually performed by a technician. So the technician who is performing this casting procedure should have a deep knowledge of the compositions of the materials which he is using during casting procedure. That is about the alloy, about the investment material, about different materials which he is using everything. Now also he should have deep knowledge about the microstructures, about the phase diagrams and heat treatments, etc. And based on all these, um, that is this is for selection and use of the alloys. Now, in addition, he should have excellent skill as well as scientific background for using the sophisticated equipment and techniques used in the procedure of casting. So, in modern casting and in ceramic laboratories, we have different equipments and different techniques out there. So, the technician should be having skills as well as scientific knowledge about all these things. Okay. Now, keeping up all this in our mind, we can enter into the first step after tooth preparation and impression making. It is after the pouring of cast and all those. The first step in our casting procedure we can say as fabrication of wax pattern. The wax pattern is fabricated by two techniques. Okay, so either there is a direct pattern technique or there is an indirect pattern technique. So in direct pattern technique, the dentist has to select type 1 hard inlay wax. Now this inlay wax is softened uniformly by waving carefully over a flame and then this wax is adapted directly on the prepared tooth. Okay, this is applied directly on the prepared tooth in the patient's mouth. So before directly applying it on the prepared tooth in the patient's mouth, the prepared tooth is coated with lubricants that is for the easy removal without distortion of the wax pattern. Now after adapting it on the prepared tooth, this card as it is required. Now, however, as it is very inconvenient to carve it within the mouth and it's a time consuming procedure, this method is now rarely used. Now, the next technique is an indirect technique. So, in this, the dentist has to obtain a very accurate elastomeric impression material of the prepared tooth with finer details reproduced accurately. Now, based on the impression which is made, cast with sport. So a master cast with size 4 die stone will be poured and this is sent to the laboratory technician for the further procedures. We are going for a direct technique. The dentist is performing even the wax pattern and after preparation of the wax pattern, that wax pattern is removed and it is sent to the laboratory for the rest of the procedure. In case of an indirect technique, just impression making and if possible a cast with sport possible maybe the dentist will not even pour a cast. Okay, so still impression making is done by the dentist and the rest of the procedure is done in indirect pattern by the technician. Now the technician performs the following steps. So what are steps is the technician performing is that after pouring the cast, the die is retrieved. Okay, as I have told you when the die is retrieved, this is immersed in certain hardener solution. So the immersion in hardener solutions like ATS, sulfur, borax, cellulose, resins, etc. will increase the surface hardness of the die. Now after putting it with hardener solutions, we apply dye spacer on the die. So this dye spacer is like nail paint or a steel paint or certain suspensions with silver and gold colors which on coating alternatively controls the space. Now, the purpose of using a dye spacer is that this is required for obtaining suitable cylindering space. Now, this method is also used for dye enlargement for compensating large casting fringes. Now, after the application of dye spacer, lubricant or thin layer of oil is applied for easy removal of the wax pattern without distortion. Now, then the wax pattern is then prepared by using type 2 soft inlay wax in case of indirect procedure. Okay, now it is carefully melted by dry heat and placed on the prepared dye layer by layer until some excess is formed. Now, care is taken to uniformly heat, melt, and bond the elements to minimize distortion due to relaxation of internal stresses, and the carving is done with sharp carvers without pulling the wax away from the margins of aggravating the die surface. Now, after the fabrication of wax pattern, the spool is fixed to the wax pattern, and the pattern is very carefully withdrawn from the die to minimize distortion. Now, if there is some delay in investing, the pattern is to be stored to minimize distortion by internal stress relaxation in cold water or in refrigerator. It should be placed in cold water or refrigerator, which cannot be invested immediately. So with this, we just complete up the wax pattern fabrication procedure. So next step is investing. So that is going to be dealt as a different class. So I hope for today this much is enough. That is up to fabrication of wax pattern. So thank you people. Have a nice day.